Welcome into Grimscapes of Horror. My name is Grim, this is your new haven for all things horror movie related, and I just got back from seeing 28 Years Later, and I'm here to review 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, and 28 Years Later. And hopefully we won't have a 28 Decades Later, because, well, we probably will. Actually, no, it's going to be called 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, the sequel. But, anyways, this is my first time, so I heard that this movie was coming out, and I've heard of the 28 Days Later, the original movie that came out back in 2002, and all I knew about it was like some zombie movie that deal with like an outbreak, the apocalypse, something like that. And so to watch the new one, I went back this week and I watched the two movies that came out, 28 Days Later, and then for some reason I didn't know about this sequel, but nobody talks about this sequel for some reason. It's called 28 Weeks Later, and to me it's not that bad. But this won't be a ranking, it's more like a review of the movies and my thoughts on these movies. And then when I get into the new one, 28 Years Later, I'm going to be more non-spoiler about that. But I do want to touch upon some things in that movie some that I didn't like. But just getting right into it, let me know what you think about these movies down below. Do you like these movies? Which out of these are your favorite? Which do you think is the worst? And just kicking off here, we have 28 Days Later, which came out in 2002, and I think this might have been an indie film. I know it had a really like cheap budget. Was 28 Days Later, and yes, it was an indie film, but then it was later distributed by Fox, and it was only made for like $8 million. So it was made really cheap, and it's directed by Danny Boyle and written by Alex Garland, and it really, I did not know how much this movie really inspired like the zombie movies until I watched it. I'm like, wait, this kind of reminds me of this, reminds me of that. And me, I'm a big zombie movie lover. So, from what I read, this movie kind of like redefines the zombie genre with its raw kinetic energy, and that's what I saw when I watched it. But basically, in this first one, the movie is started by an outbreak that is caused by a monkey who is infected and bites a scientist, and then all hell breaks loose. And this is set in London, in the UK, and then we go to our protagonist, Jim, who's played by Cillian Murphy in one of his like first roles, I believe, and he wakes up from a coma. And this really caught me off guard. I'm like, wait, didn't this happen in The Walking Dead that came out in 2010? And then it was a comic book before that. So my guess here is that Robert Kirkman, he took inspiration. He wrote the comics for The Walking Dead, and my thoughts here is that he took inspiration from 28 Days Later, and that's how. And now it makes sense why the first episode of The Walking Dead is called Days Gone By, which is the name of the first issue or volume of The Walking Dead. Now it makes sense to me. But yeah, so 28 days later, Jim wakes from a coma and is in a deserted London that like there's like no one around. And then as he navigates through London, he meets some survivors, and he basically finds out that the infected aren't the only threat, but human desperation and cruelty are just as bad. And at its core, this movie is really an exploration of rage, as the idea of rage as this virus, and you see this word used a lot, is more than just a plot device. It's like a symbol of like the unfiltered primal aggression. And like unlike traditional zombies, the infected in this movie are not like undead. They're not dead. They're alive, and are basically consumed by this uncontrollable fury. And basically, how it works in this movie is that the violence and everything and the rage is already within us. And what this virus does, it doesn't create monsters, but it strips away like the restraint that we have to not give into these primal urges. And so in that sense, the rage kind of becomes a mirror reflecting the darkest impulses of humanity, as we see later in the movie. And when like they get to the military base, and then there's also the whole thing of survival versus civilization. And as Selena early in the movie says, staying alive is as good as it gets, as she embodies a bleak worldview where morality is a luxury. But the movie also challenges this when Jim, Selena, Frank, and Hannah, who is Frank's daughter, are almost like a surrogate family. And when I saw like these four come together, it kind of also reminded me of Zombieland, which is another zombie movie that I love, where we have Columbus, Tallahassee, Short Stack, I believe the girl's name is, and then Emma Stone's character, Wichita, I think her name is. I have the Funko Pops over here too, well, of Columbus and Wichita, but they're almost like a surrogate family in a way. And and we see, and they don't last long together, but we do get glimpses of like tenderness, humor, trust, and the emotional bond between these four people. But that doesn't last long until Frank gets killed, or he gets turned, and then he gets shot, and it's kind of like a turn in the movie when that happens. And then, because Frank's warmth and optimism as like a fatherly figure stand in like a contrast to Selina's cold, like serious demeanor. And like at this turning point, it's like the group's emotional core is ripped out from this family, and we start to see the descent into like moral, because this military compound that they go to is a promise for safety, and we see this in The Walking Dead too, which really want to watch The Walking Dead at some point. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. I haven't watched it in a few years now, but I really want to rewatch it. But it basically goes on the same principles as these movies, where a military compound, you think that it's going to be safety, you think it's going to give you shelter, and like basically you can trust the military, and you can trust the order. But it quickly reveals itself as like a dystopia where Major West, who is like the leader of this group, kind of like the governor in The Walking Dead. If you know The Walking Dead, you'll probably get my references. But his soldiers represent the institutional rot that can become beneath the surface of like order, where their plan is to use Selina and like Frank's daughter Hannah, who is literally like a child. She's for like forced reproduction to like recreate and everything, and it exposes a chilling truth that even in the absence of infection, these people aren't infected. Humans themselves can also become monsters and predators, which, yeah, it's just really sickening, and this basically says that civilization is a fragile construct and is easily twisted into tyranny when fear and power collide, and then we also see Jim, Cillian Murphy's character, go through this transformation as he is more of like a passive observer. He's really quiet. He doesn't talk a lot. But by the end, he's like a ruthless protector as we see him kill to get back to his newfound family. And like he unleashes a level of violence. And this is also a question that the Major West asks him, where he's like, "How many have you killed?" Blah blah, which is also something that they do in The Walking Dead. But it's almost like and he's like, the only one he's ever killed is like a little boy, and then he's like, it's because you had to, like. But now we see that when it comes to protecting Selina and Hannah, he blurs the lines between man and monster, as when Selina hesitates to kill him, unsure if he's infected. It's a moment of where has rage infected him too, even without the virus. But the movie leaves that question, and it like makes us question and like see the cost of survival, where sometimes you might have to kill the ones that you love, or sometimes you don't know whether you can trust the ones that you trust the ones that you love and that you hold close. But yeah, I really did like Danny Boyle's approach with this movie, as he made this decision to shoot on digital video, which gave the movie almost like a documentary texture, where it kind of like in the beginning almost reminded me of like a nature documentary. And as you see like the empty London like streets and everything, and like you just see like these wide shots of just Jim, or Cillian Murphy's character, just walking down the street, and like sometimes like the shots get tight, and it just creates this like haunting realism. And then the pacing, it's also like almost like a slow burn effect, where it's quiet and there's like reflective moments that are just like, and then like they have like bursts of violence and chaos within them. And then there's this one song that I heard in this movie. It was like more towards the ending, where they kind of use it to build tension with little dread, and they use it to build up to the climax. And they just use it so well. And again, this isn't a traditional zombie film, because these infected are still alive. They're not dead or undead, and so the horror feels more grounded and more like real. But yeah, getting into the performances within this movie, Cillian Murphy goes from like I said, a passive observer to like not a vengeful, but like a protector of these two girls. And his transformation is subtle, but like you feel like how powerful he becomes. Almost like he's filled with the rage, but like not the same rage. He's the good type of rage, I guess you say. But Naomi Harris brings intensity and subtlety to Selina, who is a woman hardened by trauma but not beyond hope. You have Brendan Gleeson, who is the emotional heart of the movie, as he portrays Frank, who is like a father clinging to optimism, hoping that they can make this out alive. Then we have Christopher Eccleston, I believe his name is, who delivers a chilling performance as Major West and embodies that film's dark theme, of this movie's dark theme, that the real monsters may not be infected at all, and that the real monsters are the people that are still alive. Well, they're all alive, but you know what I mean. The ones that are not infected. But yeah, I give 28 Days Later a B plus, and moving on to 28 Weeks Later. And this is 6 months after the original outbreak of the rage virus, and this movie follows the U.S. military, where they send people out to London to try to attempt to repopulate and rebuild a quarantined London. And the story centers on Don, who is a father who survives the initial outbreak but makes a devastating choice that haunts the rest of the movie, where he leaves his wife and son to save himself. And so he is haunted by this throughout the whole movie. And then we follow, and so we see him later, I believe, where he has new children, and they sneak into the city and bring the virus with them. And that's where chaos, and the movie just spirals into a desperate fight for survival as the virus spreads again, and this time with even more tragic consequences. And this movie really more focuses on Don's cowardice and need for redemption for how he left his previous family, and it just drives the entire catastrophe. And his personal failure becomes the whole, his personal failure basically drives the plot. And then this movie also critiques the illusion of safety through militarization, as the U.S. occupation is portrayed as both a savior but also an oppressor, offering order then unleashing destruction. And then we find out that Andy in this movie, I think one of the kids, is inherited immunity from his mother, and it raises questions about evolution and the future of humanity, as is he the hope that they're looking for to stop this infection or to find a cure, or is it just another variable in a more troubled world? Because we do see the military shift from trying to contain this to more of extermination to destroy the infected, and shows how quickly these institutions can abandon morality under pressure and just try to destroy what they can to save themselves. And yeah, the narratives in this movie aren't as strong as they were in the first one, which I think is probably why it's more forgettable. It's not as remarkable as the first one. But Juan Carlos Fresnadillo is the director for this one, and this movie feels more intimate and apocalyptic, as the opening scene I thought was great, as it was really fast paced, and I really like how they used the camera. It was kind of more shaky, but it wasn't unfocused, if that makes sense. You just felt like action packed in a way, and it just creates the tension with kinetic, and it just plunges you into the panic of Don, who leaves his family. And later the movie uses more wide shots in the air of empty London to bring out the calm before the storm. And then we get some night vision sequences, as we have the military with the night vision in the underground tunnels, and it just makes for some especially haunting moments. And then the performances we have in this movie: Robert Carlyle as Don, as he plays both the coward and then the infected later on. Then we have Rose Byrne in this movie, who brings a quiet intensity as Scarlet, a scientist who's trying to protect the children and preserve the future. But then we also get a surprise as Jeremy Renner is in this movie as one of the military guys called Doyle, and he's almost like the moral compass of the military. And his decision to disobey orders and to save the civilians adds a layer of heroism and tragedy to his character. And I remember rooting for no, I'm pretty sure he died. And then Imogen Poots and Macintosh Muggleton, who are Tammy and Andy, the two children of Don, I believe. And they're the emotional anchors of this movie. But yeah, this movie doesn't really have much more to it. I feel like it is more forgettable. But also, I give it, it's between a B- and C+ for me. I can't really decide, but I think it's between a B- and C+ for 28 Weeks Later. But going into 28 Years Later, and this one's gonna be more non-spoilerish, but I might talk about some spoilers that do happen, but I will let you know when I do get to that. But starting off with the non-spoiler stuff, this movie is set just a basic premise, nothing spoilerish. This movie is set 3 decades after the original outbreak, and the film explores a United Kingdom that's been permanently quarantined. Like no one can get in and out, and the virus has evolved, and so has the world. And like the infected, the rage have, I'm gonna call them the rage. They've gone like more. They've gone smarter, and they've like adapted to like the outbreak world. And so the survivors, they live in isolated, low tech communities where basically we're on this like little island that's like where it's kind of like on a causeway where basically when the tide like comes in, when the tide like rises, like you can't cross it, and so they can only cross it when there's low tide. And I think that was really interesting and really like smart way to like create like a habitat or like build a community within like this sort of like post-apocalyptic world. And so we follow Spike, who is, I believe, like 12 years old, as he's raised by his father Jamie, who is played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, and the sick mother Isla, I believe the name is, and played by Jodie Comer. Jodie Comer, I haven't seen her a lot in other things. I've only seen her on Free Guy, the one movie called The Last Duel with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, and this one. And let me just say, I like to see her more in things. Like she's such a great like actress. She her performance in this movie was amazing. And the story follows Spike's coming of age journey as he ventures into the mainland, which is now a wasteland crawling with new and more intelligent variants of the infected, known as alphas. And he basically runs away with his mother who is sick and tries to find the doctor who is like out in the mainland, and is really like it gets to a point where like it gets like heartbreaking, emotional, and you basically like see this kid, 12 years old, who is played by Alfie Williams, and he captures. Alfie Williams just really does. This is his breakout performance, and he captures the innocence and like grit of a child forced to become a warrior. And then we have Aaron Taylor Johnson, who brings like a quiet strength and desperation to character as the father Jamie, and he tries to use like tough love with his son, and like he makes some mistakes in the movie, and you feel really relatable to this family. While Jodie Comer portrays Isla, who is both like soft but like also like tragic, as like there's something wrong with her. Like you see that at the beginning of the movie, but you don't know what's wrong with her. Maybe it's schizophrenia, maybe it's something else. But that's why all they know, they don't have a doctor on this island, so they're like, she's sick. There's something wrong with her, but there's nothing they can do, and that's why Spike takes his mother without anyone knowing, makes a distraction, and takes her out into the mainland to find this doctor that he was told about. And it really is like a coming of age journey adventure in this post-apocalyptic world that I really just enjoy. And Boyle returns to co-direct this movie alongside Sarah Johnson, and just their collaboration to make this both like horror but also an adventure film. And I feel like this is a movie that you could show. Actually, no, there's some like zombie nudity in this movie, so I wouldn't show any kids. But like, if I would say if you watch this movie first, and then if you think it's suitable for like your younger ones, maybe like preteens or something like that, I really watch this movie with them. But man, the cinematography, but like with Boyle's signature tension and kinetic energy, are just balanced with Johnson's psychological depth and emotional like subtlety. As the result of both of them coming together is a viscerally terrifying and heartbreakingly like human when it comes to like this character of like the cinematography strips away the chaos of like the urban collapse and focuses on like the eerie stillness of a world that was abandoned. There's like no cavalry, no rescue. We get some like little key details about like the world surrounding this United Kingdom, and it's some like raw survival. And then there's just like moments of compassion and beauty flicker through like the darkness of this world, making the horror like more, making the horror in this movie feel more like moving, and like, really just gives you like a push almost. Like if 28 Days Later was about panic and 28 weeks later was about containment, 28 years later is more about like enduring like this like world and the long slow ache of a world that forgot how to heal. And I feel like this is a movie that a lot of people need right now, because this movie really touches on the themes of this movie really does touch upon the themes of like generational trauma at its center, as Spike represents a generation born into this apocalypse with no memory of the world before, and we get like some key moments of like the mother going through like the psychosis, talking about the world before, and we just see the journey of this kid who was born in the apocalypse go on a journey as he discovers his identity, as it is about survival. Like his life is about survival at the end of the day. That's all he knows now, and and there's also the mutation, both viral and moral, as the alphas are not just faster, but they seem to like strategize and they're like more smart, hinting at a terrifying evolution of of the infected. As they are alive, they're not dead, so they're alive, and so their brain works just as well as humans. And then we see as the human survivors, they have like, splintered into like, cults, militias, and like isolated like groups, communities. And then faith is also explored through the characters. Like these type of characters, they interpret the virus as like a divine will, and so it kind of asks like, in the absence of like order, what do people choose to believe? And 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 so at this point, I'm going to talk about some things that are a little spoilers. So if you haven't seen this movie yet, I recommend to click out or like skip a little bit and skip to the outro. But I'm just gonna leave you with this. This is not just a zombie film. It's more of a meditation on what's left when the world ends slowly, not with a bang, but like with like a whimper. And I just want to talk about like the ending real quick, because going more into spoilers now, this movie ended in a way where basically I didn't see the opening. I kind of like missed that part. Like I was a little. I didn't think I'd be that late, because like I thought they'd show a bunch of trailers like they usually do, what they didn't this time, which was weird to me. But anyway, I kind of missed the opening, so I kind of like read about it, because there's like this character named Jimmy who pops up later in the movie and it's connected to the opening, and so I kind of missed that a little bit. But supposedly the one of the characters in the opening ties into this character in the ending, where they're all dressed in like different tracksuits, different color tracksuits. And I guess they're supposed to represent Teletubbies, as in the opening, what I read is that they were watching Teletubbies on TV when they got attacked. And there was only one survivor, but we see a bunch of these like blonde-headed, vibrant color, and basically it's supposed to be the like the people from the opening. And so I think this might lead into the sequel, which is 28 years later, the Bone Temple, but I could be wrong about that. But yeah, I also really liked how we see this one character named Eric, and he kind of explains how we kind of get an explanation of basically the United Kingdom, that Europe is a quarantine zone. Everything outside of Europe is safe. I don't know. See, they said island. They don't talk about Europe specifically, but they say like the island is quarantine. I don't know if that means Russia and China are safe, but like Australia is safe. The U.S. is safe. I mean, this guy literally says he's from the U.S. and his ship like crashed or something, went down, and so he got stuck on this island, and so there was no way to get off the island. And yeah, like he literally had a smartphone as well, so we know that there's still civilization somewhere, but there's like more of like a Jurassic Park situation if you think about it. And yeah, that's all I really want to talk about. I really like the little background that we got about the world in this movie, as I really want to see like what they do in the future. Like, do we see them kind of like try to escape to the U.S.? What are like these people who had to be in survival mode? Like, what happens if they set sail, go to the U.S. and like see that there's civilization? Like, how do they adapt to that? And that's kind of what I kind of want to see in like the future in these movies. I really hope they don't do like a 28 decades later. I feel like that's gonna be too extreme, too much. I think the foundation that we have right now, the structure with this, is perfect. And yeah, I give this movie an A+. I think it's the best out of these movies. If I had to rank them, I'd do at the bottom 28 weeks later, 28 days later, and then 28 years later. I did not expect to like this movie as much as I did, but I really did enjoy it. I think y'all should check it out if you haven't already. Yeah, hope y'all did enjoy. If you did, please drop a like, subscribe if you are new, and join the Gremlins. That's why I changed it from the Grimpire to the Gremlins. I just think it's like it fits better. And turn post notifications to get notified when I do post again. All my socials will be down in the description below. I have my Blue Sky down there, which I'm trying to remember to be more active on, but yeah, I don't know. I am active on my Instagram though. You can follow me there. Also trying to figure out what to post on my TikTok as well. I have some ideas, but I have that down below as well. And I also have my Twitch down there where I do stream sometimes. I just played the Black Ops 2 campaign, which was a game that I played a lot. But I also stream Marvel Rivals Fortnite on there, so If you would like to follow me there and follow me so you can get notified when I do go lives and we can chill, talk. I always talk to the people who show up in my chat. So, yeah. Hope you all did enjoy. Let me know what you thought about these movies down below, and I'll also have links down below so you can check out 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later on Prime Video right now.